The letter arrived without warning. Emma Collins held it in her hands as she leaned against the kitchen counter of her cramped apartment. The envelope was thick, the paper heavy, embossed with a crest she didn't recognize. No return address, only her name typed in sharp black ink. She slid it open carefully, expecting a scam, but what she found inside made her heart skip. You have been selected for a one-night contract. Location: Hale Estate. Task: maintenance of electrical and security systems. Duration: 12 hours. Compensation: $50,000. Transportation will be provided. Arrival at 6 p.m. sharp. The signature at the bottom was just a single name: Hale. Emma almost laughed. 50 grand for one night? It had to be a joke. But then she checked her phone. Her coworker Tyler had received the same message. So had Sarah, Miguel, and James, the entire emergency maintenance team she usually worked with. Is this for real? Tyler asked over the group call, his voice trembling with both suspicion and excitement. I mean, Hale? Sarah said. That has to be Richard Hale. The Richard Hale. The guy who disappeared from the public eye 5 years ago? Worth what, 20 billion? Emma knew the name well. Everyone did. Richard Hale was once a legend in Silicon Valley, a man who built half the security networks Fortune 500 companies still relied on. Then, after the sudden death of his wife and son, he vanished. No interviews, no sightings, no scandals, just silence. But rumors swirled. Some said he'd gone mad. Others whispered darker things. Why us? Miguel muttered. Why call a random maintenance crew from Detroit to fix whatever the hell is broken in a billionaire's mansion? Because we'll say yes, Emma replied. She looked at the rent notice taped to her fridge. 2 months behind. The hospital bills from her mother's surgery still unopened on the counter. Her jaw tightened. And because no one else would. That night, a black SUV pulled up outside Emma's apartment building. The driver wore a black suit, no expression, no words spoken beyond a curt "Collins?" When she nodded, he opened the door. The others were already inside. Tyler cracked nervous jokes, Sarah kept scrolling on her phone, Miguel stared out the window, and James, the oldest of the group, sat silent, arms crossed, as if regretting his decision already. They drove for hours, leaving the city lights behind, climbing winding mountain roads where cell service died and only the sound of rain tapping against the glass remained. At last, through the fog, the mansion appeared. The Hale estate was less a house than a fortress, towering stone walls, wrought iron gates, cameras perched like watchful eyes on every corner. Beyond the gates, the silhouette of the mansion rose against the storm clouds, its windows glowing faintly like the eyes of something alive. The SUV stopped. Guards in dark uniforms opened the doors. Their weapons were visible, not hidden. Welcome, one said simply. Emma stepped out, shivering in the cold air. The rain-slicked cobblestones glistened under the floodlights. Somewhere deep inside her chest, instinct whispered, "This isn't right." But $50,000 could silence a lot of instincts. Inside, the mansion was breathtaking. Chandeliers sparkled above polished marble floors. Sculptures and paintings lined the hallways, priceless artifacts scattered as if casually placed. Yet the space felt empty. Too clean. Like a museum after hours, untouched by real life. At the top of the staircase he appeared. Richard Hale. Older than in the photos, his once boyish charm hardened into something colder. His hair silver now, his frame lean but upright, eyes sharp and unblinking. He wore a dark suit, perfectly tailored, as though time itself had not dared to touch him. "Thank you for coming," Hale said, his voice calm, measured, almost soothing. "You have a simple task tonight. Ensure my systems are functional. Nothing more, nothing less." His gaze swept across them, lingering on Emma for a moment longer than she liked. Then he turned, gesturing to the grand staircase that descended into the lower levels. "The estate is old," he continued. "Beneath it lies a foundation that requires constant upkeep. You will be escorted to the basement. You will not stray beyond the areas designated for you. Do this, and you will leave here richer than you ever dreamed. No one spoke. No one dared. The guards led them toward an elevator at the far end of the hall. As the doors slid shut, Emma caught one last glimpse of Hale standing motionless at the top of the stairs, his eyes locked on them. Watching. Measuring. As the elevator sank into the depths of the mansion, Emma felt her stomach twist. The air grew colder, the hum of machinery louder. This wasn't just a maintenance job. This was something else. And whatever it was, they were already trapped inside it. The elevator rattled as it sank deeper into the mansion's bowels. A strip of pale light buzzed overhead, flickering now and then, each stutter plunging the group into half-darkness. Emma wrapped her arms around herself, trying to ignore the prickle crawling up her spine. Tyler broke the silence first. Man, this feels like the start of a horror movie. Maintenance crew goes into a billionaire's creepy basement and never comes out. Don't, Sarah muttered. Her eyes stayed glued to the numbers above the door as they ticked down past B3, B4, B5. Seriously, don't. Miguel shifted uncomfortably, his broad shoulders taking up half the space. We're just here to check electrical panels. We fix stuff, we leave. That's it. But the way his voice cracked betrayed the doubt he was trying to hide. James hadn't spoken at all. He leaned against the rail, staring straight ahead, jaw tight. The old man's silence was louder than all their words combined. The elevator shuddered to a stop. The doors slid open with a groan. A blast of cold, damp air greeted them. They stepped out into a long corridor carved from stone, lined with pipes and wires that ran like veins across the ceiling. Industrial lights hummed overhead, but shadows still clung to the corners, thick and restless. The floor beneath their boots was smooth concrete, faintly wet, as though the walls themselves were sweating. The guards guided them forward. Emma counted 6 of them now, each carrying rifles, their expressions unreadable. Too much security for a simple maintenance job. After a few turns, they reached a steel door. One of the guards swiped a card, and it opened with a heavy hiss. Inside was a control hub, a sprawling room filled with humming servers, glowing monitors, and tangled cables. The machines pulsed like a living organism, the steady drone vibrating in Emma's chest. This is your workspace, the lead guard said. His accent was hard to place. You will stay here unless given permission otherwise. Tyler whistled low. Jesus. This looks like NASA down here. Emma approached one of the panels, running her hand along the metal. The system was sophisticated, years ahead of anything she'd worked on before. Whoever designed it wasn't just rich, they were brilliant, obsessive. What's all this for? She asked before she could stop herself. The guard's gaze sharpened. It is not your concern. Emma swallowed her reply. The team spread out, pretending to focus on the work. But beneath the clatter of keyboards and the static hum of machinery, unease festered. Sarah crouched near a panel, her flashlight beam catching something scratched into the metal, 4 letters, jagged and hurried, like a desperate message. Help. Her breath hitched. She glanced around quickly, but the guard's eyes were on her. She covered the word with her hand, pretending to adjust a wire. Miguel, on the opposite side of the room, froze when he noticed a locked cage in the corner. Inside were stacks of small crates, each stamped with biohazard warnings. The guards never looked at it, but their bodies seemed positioned unconsciously to block anyone from approaching. Hey! Miguel whispered when Emma drifted near. You see that? Emma followed his gaze. Her stomach tightened. Whatever was in those crates, it had nothing to do with maintenance. Before she could respond, the overhead lights flickered. Once. Twice. Then they stabilized. The guard frowned. Work faster. Emma nodded, pretending to adjust settings on the nearest terminal. But her mind raced. The crates. The scratched message. The suffocating presence of armed men. This wasn't maintenance. This was containment. Hours crawled by. They worked under constant watch, every movement scrutinized. Tyler cracked fewer jokes, Sarah's hands trembled when she typed, Miguel kept shooting furtive glances at the cages, and James seemed to be studying the guards, memorizing their patterns. At midnight, the hum of machinery shifted, a deep bass note vibrating through the floor like the growl of something waking. The monitors blinked, streams of encrypted codes scrolling faster than Emma could follow. One by one, new windows opened on the screens, grainy black and white camera feeds from lower levels. For a moment, she couldn't understand what she was seeing. Cells. Rows of them. Each with a small window. Behind some, shadows moved. Shapes, human shapes, pacing back and forth, or crouched in corners. Emma's blood ran cold. Sarah saw it too. Her whisper was barely audible. "Oh my God! Those are people!" Before Emma could react, one of the guards slammed a button, and the screens went black again. "You did not see that!" he barked. The group exchanged terrified glances. Tyler tried to laugh it off, but his voice cracked. Okay, this is messed up. Are we seriously ignoring that? There are people down here." The guard raised his rifle. Silence. The room fell quiet. The only sound was the hum of servers and the frantic beating of Emma's heart. She realized then that the money wasn't the prize. It was the bait. And now they were in the cage, just like the shadows on the screens. The hours stretched, suffocating in their silence. The servers hummed on, monitors flickered, and the guards stood like statues, weapons slung but always ready. The team moved through the motions of their supposed repairs, but none of them were working anymore. They were surviving. Emma's hands shook as she pretended to reroute circuits. Every few minutes she stole glances at the corner cage with the biohazard crates. The warning symbols glared back at her like glowing eyes in the dark. Tyler leaned close, whispering, "This isn't a repair job. We're in a—" Emma cut him off with a sharp shake of her head. The guards were too close. Every whisper could be a death sentence. But then the moment came that shattered their uneasy stalemate. A shrill alarm pierced the air. Red strobes flashed across the ceiling, bathing the room in frantic bursts of light. The guards stiffened, rifles snapping into position. One of them barked into a radio in a language Emma didn't recognize. The monitors flickered on again, this time without warning. The same cell block appeared on screen, but now the images were chaotic. Shadows slammed against reinforced glass, distorted faces pressing forward, mouths open in silent screams. One cell door buckled under violent impacts, metal groaning like it might give way. Sarah gasped and stumbled backward. "Oh my God! They're trying to get out! Stay back!" the lead guard shouted, though none of them had moved closer to the monitors. His eyes betrayed something Emma hadn't seen before, fear. The screen cut out, plunging the room into silence but for the pounding of boots. More guards stormed through the door, their steps heavy, their orders sharp and panicked. Emma felt it in her chest. Whatever was down there wasn't supposed to stir. Something had gone wrong. In the chaos, James finally moved. The old man had been silent for hours, but now he spoke, his voice calm and commanding. "Cover me." Emma blinked. "What?" But James was already moving, slipping between two distracted guards. His hand darted into his tool belt, pulling out a small flathead screwdriver. With a flick, he jammed it into the lock of the biohazard cage. The alarm drowned out the faint click as the latch gave way. Emma's pulse spiked. "James, what the hell are you doing?" He ignored her, opening the cage just enough to pull one crate free. He slid it across the floor toward them, his weathered face grim. Tyler crouched, popping the lid before Emma could protest. Inside was not what any of them expected. Glass vials. Dozens of them, glowing faintly with a bluish liquid that seemed to shimmer unnaturally even under the harsh fluorescent light. Miguel swore under his breath. "That's not chemical waste." Emma picked one up carefully. The liquid pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat trapped inside. She couldn't look away. Sarah's voice trembled. "This is what they're hiding. It's not just money. It's something alive." Before Emma could answer, a muffled boom shook the walls. Dust rained from the ceiling. The guards shouted, their radios exploding with static. One phrase, repeated again and again, cut through the noise. Containment breach. Emma dropped the vial back into the crate as reality crashed over her. Those cells on the monitors, their shadows weren't prisoners. They were experiments. And now they were loose. The guards began funneling out of the control room, leaving only 2 behind to keep watch over the maintenance crew. Their eyes darted nervously toward the hall, their fingers twitching on the triggers. That was their mistake. James moved like he had been waiting his whole life for this moment. With surprising speed, he lunged at the nearest guard, wrenching the rifle upward as if fired, the deafening shot ricocheting off the ceiling. Miguel tackled the second guard before he could react, pinning him to the ground with brute strength. The fight was messy, brutal, but short. When the gunfire stopped, the alarms still wailed. But the guards were unconscious. Emma stared at James, chest heaving. "What the hell, James? You could have gotten us killed!" His eyes burned with a certainty that silenced her. "We're already dead if we stay here. Don't you see? They didn't bring us here to fix anything. They brought us here as insurance." Sarah's face paled. "Insurance?" James nodded. "Expendable bodies if something breaks loose." Tyler swore loudly, pacing in frantic circles. "This is insane. We're not soldiers, we're not! This isn't what we signed up for." "Then leave," James said coldly. "But if we don't find out what's in those lower levels, none of us are making it out alive." Emma clenched her fists. The thought of those shapes on the monitors, their distorted faces, their pounding fists, made her stomach twist. She wanted to run. She wanted to wake up back in her tiny apartment, complain about rent, and never think about this place again. But deep down, she knew James was right. This mansion wasn't a home. It was a labyrinth. A vault for secrets so dark that billions in hush money couldn't cover them forever. And now those secrets were awake. Emma picked up the fallen guard's flashlight, its beams slicing through the dim. Her voice was steadier than she expected when she said, "Ben, let's go see what this billionaire's been hiding." James nodded once. Sarah bit her lip but stepped forward. Miguel slung the rifle over his shoulder, eyes grim. Even Tyler, still shaking, fell in line. The team stood together, framed in the strobing red light, the alarms screaming above them. And then they turned toward the dark corridor, where the mansion's true heart waited to be revealed. The alarms howled as if the mansion itself were alive, screaming at them to turn back. Red strobes cast jagged shadows across the walls, stretching and collapsing with every pulse of light. Emma tightened her grip on the flashlight, its narrow beam trembling as she led the group deeper down the corridor. Behind her, the others followed in tense silence, their footsteps echoing like whispers of the dead. At the far end, a reinforced door hissed open, triggered by the emergency lockdown. The path led downward, metal stairs spiraling into a concrete shaft that seemed to swallow sound itself. "Jesus!" Miguel muttered, peering into the black. "This isn't a house. It's a bunker." James smirked grimly. "Not a bunker. A vault." Sarah hugged herself, her voice barely audible. "Why would a billionaire need all this?" Emma didn't answer. She didn't have to. Every instinct screamed that whatever Richard Hale was hiding, it wasn't something money could bury forever. They descended. The air grew colder, damper. The smell shifted, bleach and steel at first, then something sour, organic, wrong. Emma's flashlight cut across the walls. Diagrams etched into metal panels. DNA helixes. Anatomical sketches. Equations scrawled like graffiti. Notes in hurried handwriting. Phase 3 stability, subject rejection, tissue collapse. Tyler gagged. "What the hell is this? Science fair from hell?" James traced one symbol with his fingers. "This isn't science. This is obsession." They reached the bottom. Another corridor stretched out before them, this one lined with reinforced windows. Emma lifted the flashlight and froze. Behind the glass were cells. The first one was empty, except for dark stains smeared along the walls. Something had clawed gouges into the steel, deep enough to leave twisted grooves. The second cell wasn't empty. A figure huddled in the corner, thin and trembling. Human, but wrong. Its skin was pale, translucent, veins glowing faintly like rivers of light. When Emma's beam touched it, the figure jerked its head up. Its eyes were wide, glossy black voids. It shrieked. The sound pierced through the glass like a blade, high-pitched and primal, rattling in Emma's skull until she staggered back. Sarah screamed, clapping her hands over her ears. The creature hurled itself at the glass. The reinforced wall shook violently, cracks spiderwebbing across the surface. "Move!" James barked. "Now!" They ran, the sound of fists pounding behind them. The corridor became a blur, more cells, more shadows inside. Some pressed their distorted faces against the glass, others lay curled on the floor, twitching. One cell contained nothing but a pulsing mass of flesh, breathing like a single monstrous lung. Emma's stomach twisted. "Dear God, what did he do to them?" James's voice was stone. "He made them." They burst into a chamber at the end of the hall, larger than anything they'd seen so far. It looked like a control center, filled with panels and glowing screens still powered despite the chaos. In the center stood a cylindrical tank filled with cloudy fluid. Something floated inside. Emma raised the flashlight, and her throat closed. It was a child. Or it had been. Small frame, hair drifting in the liquid like seaweed. But its body was twisted, limbs too long, skin patterned with the same faint glow they had seen before. Tubes pierced its flesh, keeping it suspended in a mockery of life. Sarah collapsed to her knees. "This is sick. This is torture." Tyler stumbled backward, clutching his head. "We need to get out. Now. Screw this. Screw all of this." But James ignored them, stepping closer to the control panels. His eyes darted across the readouts, the endless streams of data. "These aren't experiments. They're prototypes. He's building something." Emma felt bile rise in her throat. "For what?" James turned slowly, his face grim in the red glow. "Immortality. He's trying to rewrite humanity." The floor shuddered beneath them. A low, guttural roar echoed from the corridor behind. The alarms changed pitch, warbling into a deeper, more urgent siren. "Containment breach," a mechanical voice repeated overhead. "Subject Alpha, mobile," Miguel cursed. "Alpha? As in, the first?" The tank rattled violently. The childlike figure inside spasmed, its eyes snapping open. They glowed white, burning through the murk like twin headlights. Emma screamed. "Run!" The glass of the tank cracked, spiderwebs spreading fast. The crew bolted through the opposite door just as the shattering explosion thundered behind them. Shards rained down, fluid flooding the chamber floor. And from the wreckage came the sound of something breathing. Something awake. Something free. The door slammed shut behind them, sealing with a hiss. For a moment, there was only silence, broken, wet silence. Emma pressed her back against the steel and gasped for breath, her flashlight shaking wildly across the corridor. Miguel gripped his stolen rifle so tightly his knuckles whitened. Sarah was sobbing into her hands, trying to smother the sound. And then they heard it. A wet scrape. Claws dragging against concrete. Something massive shifted in the chamber they had just escaped, its breathing heavy, uneven, like a predator inhaling the scent of prey. James raised a hand for silence, but no one needed the reminder. The group froze, listening as the thing moved closer to the door. Metal groaned. The reinforced steel bent inward, a deep dent forming under the pressure of something slamming into it from the other side. Emma's stomach twisted. The door that had survived explosions, alarms, and lockdown protocols was giving way like a cheap tin sheet. Tyler panicked. "We're dead! We're so dead!" His voice cracked as he stumbled backward down the hall. "Shut up!" James hissed, grabbing him by the collar. "Noise is what it wants." The dent deepened. A second blow rattled the entire frame. A hiss of escaping air leaked through the edges. And then silence. The creature stopped. The alarms still wailed, bathing the corridor in red strobes, but all other sound was gone. No scraping, no breathing. Just nothing. Emma's pulse hammered in her ears. The silence was worse than the noise. At least when it was moving, they knew where it was. She lifted her flashlight, forcing her voice steady. "We can't stay here. We need to keep moving." James nodded sharply. "This way." They crept down the corridor, every step deliberate, every breath a gamble. The hall twisted, branching into new wings lined with more glass panels. Some were shattered already, their interiors streaked with bloody handprints and inhuman markings. A metallic clang echoed behind them. Emma swung the flashlight back. Empty hallway. But then movement. A shadow darted across the wall, impossibly fast, vanishing around the bend. The beam of light caught only a flash, pale flesh, veins glowing faintly like the vials they'd seen. "Alpha!" James whispered. The name made Emma's skin crawl. The group quickened their pace, but no matter how fast they moved, Alpha was faster. It didn't chase. It circled. Every so often they'd glimpse it, watching from a distance, slipping between shadows, testing them. It was playing with them. Finally, they stumbled into a new chamber, a wide laboratory with shattered glass walls and overturned equipment. Blue liquid pooled across the floor, dripping from broken containment tubes. Sarah gagged at the sight of something floating in the puddle. A body. Or what was left of one. Half human, half something else. Its face was frozen in a scream, its hands fused into a grotesque claw. "Oh God!" she whimpered. "He wasn't just experimenting on strangers. These were people. Volunteers maybe, or not volunteers," James said grimly, scanning the room. "Prisoners. Runaways. Anyone who wouldn't be missed." Miguel's jaw tightened. He turned them into this? Before Emma could respond, a sharp metallic slam rattled the chamber. One of the doors buckled outward. Dust showered from the ceiling. Alpha was here. The lights flickered violently. Red, then black, then red again. And in one of those flashes, Emma saw it, clearly, for the first time. It was tall, impossibly tall, its body stretched thin like tendons pulled too tight. Its skin glowed faintly beneath the strobes, veins pulsing like rivers of molten light. Its eyes burned white, unblinking. And its mouth, too wide, too human, curled upward in something that wasn't a smile but wanted to be. Emma's throat went dry. "Run!" Alpha moved. It didn't sprint. It lunged, crossing half the room in a single motion, claws carving deep grooves into the lab floor. The group scattered. Emma dove behind an overturned desk, Sarah shrieked as Miguel dragged her toward the far exit, and Tyler froze like a deer in headlights until James yanked him sideways. The creature slammed into the desk, sending Emma sprawling. Its claws punched through the steel surface inches from her head, shrieking sparks. She scrambled, sliding on the slick floor, heart battering her ribs. The exit loomed ahead, but so did Alpha. It was everywhere at once, fast, deliberate, unstoppable. Miguel turned and fired. The rifle barked, muzzle flash slicing the dark. Bullets tore into Alpha's chest. The creature staggered. For a heartbeat, hope sparked. Then Alpha tilted its head unbothered. The bullet wounds glowed with the same blue-white light, sealing as quickly as they appeared. "Oh, you've got to be kidding me!" Miguel cursed before Alpha backhanded the rifle from his hands, sending it skidding across the floor. James grabbed a metal pipe from the wreckage and swung with brutal force. It connected with a sickening crunch, but Alpha barely flinched. Instead, it turned its glowing eyes on James, studying him like an insect pinned under glass. Emma forced herself to her feet, adrenaline drowning out her fear. She spotted a control panel sparking near the wall. High-voltage conduits ran directly into the floor, powering the ruined tanks. She didn't think. She just ran. Slamming her fist onto the panel, she ripped open the manual override and yanked down the lever. Sparks exploded, electricity arcing wildly across the lab. The floor lit up in a web of raw energy, blue bolts snapping into the puddles of liquid. Alpha roared, a sound so deep it rattled Emma's bones, as the current ripped through its body. For the first time, it faltered. Now! Emma screamed. Move! The group bolted through the far exit, the lab behind them drowning in light and the unearthly shriek of something both living and dying. As the heavy door sealed behind them, they collapsed in a narrow hallway, gasping for breath. Tyler trembled uncontrollably. What the hell is that thing? How do you kill it? James wiped blood from his brow, his voice low. You don't. Not yet. Emma's hands shook as she steadied her flashlight again. Alpha's roar still echoed in her skull, seared into her memory. And she knew this wasn't over. They hadn't stopped it. They'd only made it angry. The hallway stretched endlessly, a suffocating artery of steel and shadows. The alarms had finally gone silent, leaving only the fading buzz of electricity crackling through Emma's ears. Her heart thundered louder than her footsteps as she forced herself forward, flashlight beam carving a trembling path ahead. Behind her, the others stumbled in exhaustion. Sarah leaned heavily against Miguel, still sobbing quietly. Tyler muttered under his breath, fragments of half-prayers and curses blending together. James moved with purpose, his weathered face set in grim determination, but even he was slowing. Emma's voice came out ragged. We can't just keep running. Alpha's faster. Stronger. If it wants us, it'll take us. James stopped, turning to face her. Then we make sure it doesn't want us, at least not yet. Tyler barked a bitter laugh. Oh, brilliant! And how do we do that? Throw it a steak? Maybe it prefers its prey medium rare? James ignored him, scanning the walls. His eyes locked on a keypad beside a sealed door. The screen above it flickered with green code, faintly glowing despite the power surges. This way, he said. Emma hesitated. What if it's locked? James's lips curved into the closest thing to a smile she'd seen all night. Nothing's locked forever. He knelt, pulling a small multi-tool from his belt. Within minutes the keypad sparked, the door hissing open to reveal a new chamber. Emma's breath caught. The room wasn't a lab. It was a library. Rows of glass cases stretched across the space, filled not with books but files, hard drives, and meticulously labeled vials of glowing liquid. On the walls, enormous monitors displayed genetic sequences scrolling endlessly, paired with blueprints of human anatomy fused with something else. Sarah staggered inside, her eyes wide with horror. He catalogued everything. Every experiment. Every victim. Miguel lifted a hard drive from a shelf, his face grim. This is decades of work. Billions of dollars poured into this madness. James studied one of the blueprints on the wall, tracing the lines with his finger. Not madness. Vision. His voice was cold, heavy. Richard Hale isn't just building monsters. He's building successors. Emma's stomach nodded. Successors? James turned, his eyes burning. He doesn't believe humanity is enough. He's rewriting the species. Alpha isn't a mistake, it's a prototype. Silence hung in the air like a noose. Tyler shook his head violently. No. No, this is insane. He's a lunatic with too much money and no one to tell him no. That's all. James didn't argue. He didn't need to. The truth was staring back at them from every glowing vial, every file stuffed with data. Emma steadied herself. Then we take this. Evidence. If we get out alive, the world has to know. She reached for a case of vials, but James grabbed her wrist. His grip was iron. No. If we take this out, it won't just destroy Richard Hale. It'll unleash a war. Emma yanked free. What the hell are you talking about? James's jaw tightened. You think governments won't want this? You think corporations won't pay trillions for a chance at what Hale has built? Alpha's just the beginning. This, he gestured to the shelves, is power. More dangerous than nuclear weapons. Miguel bristled. So what, we just leave it here? Let him keep playing God while people suffer? Before James could answer, a sound rolled through the chamber. A low thrum. A vibration in the floor. Emma froze. The flashlight beam quivered across the glass cases. Sarah whispered, "It's here." The thrum deepened into a steady pulse, like a heartbeat. The glass on the shelves rattled. Dust sifted from the ceiling. And then, from the far wall, came a metallic shriek as something dragged claws across steel. Alpha. Its shadow stretched long across the corridor entrance, distorted by the red strobes. Its head tilted slowly, eyes glowing white-hot in the dark. Tyler whimpered, "We can't fight that thing." Emma's chest tightened. He was right. They couldn't. But maybe they didn't need to. She swept her light across the shelves, searching desperately. And then she saw it, a console near the back wall, wires snaking down into the floor. A label flickered on the screen, Subject Containment Control. Her voice was urgent. "James! Miguel! Over there!" They sprinted for the console as Alpha stepped fully into the room. It moved with eerie calm, claws scraping along the floor, savoring their fear. James slammed his hands on the keys. "Keep it busy!" Miguel cursed, grabbing a metal rod from a broken shelf. He swung it across the floor, sparks flying as if to draw Alpha's attention. The creature's head snapped toward him instantly, eyes narrowing. Emma's heart nearly stopped as it took a step closer to Miguel. James growled through clenched teeth. "Come on, come on!" The console beeped. A panel in the ceiling hissed open, releasing a sudden cascade of gas. The chemical mist poured down, filling the chamber with a sharp, acrid stench. Alpha roared, the sound shaking the walls. It thrashed, claws carving deep trenches into the steel floor. "Move!" James shouted. They bolted, clutching drives and whatever evidence they could grab. The mist thickened, and Alpha's screeches turned guttural, muffled, but still terrifyingly close. As the doors sealed behind them, Emma doubled over, coughing. Sarah clung to her, eyes wide with terror. "It's not dead. Tell me it's dead." James shook his head, face grim. "It won't die. Not from that. But it'll buy us time." Emma swallowed hard, her mind racing. Time. That was all they had. And Richard Hale's secrets, whatever they uncovered next, might be the only weapon strong enough to stop his creation. The corridor wound downward like a spine, tighter and narrower the deeper they descended. The faint hiss of the ventilation system pressed against Emma's ears, and every shadow seemed to twitch under her flashlight beam. Behind her, Sarah's footsteps dragged, but no one dared to stop. The mist had slowed Alpha, but Emma could still feel it moving somewhere above them, hunting, relentless. At last, the passage opened into a chamber unlike the others. It wasn't a lab or archive. It was clean, almost pristine, a place deliberately designed for presentation. Rows of monitors lined the walls. A single chair faced a massive screen at the far end, and as soon as Emma stepped inside, the lights snapped on. The screen flared to life. And there he was. Richard Hale. His face appeared in sharp resolution, every detail meticulously captured, silver hair combed back, eyes cold and calculating, jaw set with authority. He wasn't speaking live, at least not yet. The recording began automatically. "Congratulations." Hale's voice filled the room, smooth and calm. "If you are hearing this, you have survived longer than most. That alone proves you are worthy of standing in this place." Sarah whimpered, clutching Emma's arm. "Oh God, he knew." The recording continued, Hale's expression unchanging. "You have seen Alpha. Beautiful, isn't it? The culmination of centuries of wasted potential corrected in one stroke. Humanity, shackled by weakness, by fear, by frailty, no longer sufficient. I sought to design a successor. Stronger. Faster. Smarter. Beyond disease, beyond aging, beyond every chain biology bound to us." Tyler's voice cracked with disbelief. "He's proud of that thing." On screen, Hale leaned closer, as if addressing them personally. "You call it a monster. I call it the future. Evolution is never gentle. It is a crucible. Only those fit to survive will inherit what comes next." Miguel cursed under his breath, slamming a fist against the wall. This bastard! Emma's stomach twisted. Hale's words weren't manic. They were deliberate. He believed every syllable. The recording flickered, then stopped. Silence. And then, suddenly, the screen shifted again. This time, Hale wasn't pre-recorded. His eyes blinked. He leaned back in a leather chair. He was live. Emma's blood ran cold. Well, he said, with a faint smile. I must admit, I didn't expect you to make it this far. James stepped forward, fists clenched. Hale. Ah. Hale's smile widened, recognizing him. James Whitlock. Always the survivor. I should have known you'd be among them. Emma glanced at James, startled. You know him? James didn't answer, but Hale did. James was one of my earliest recruits, Hale said smoothly. A soldier who understood the truth, that the world is built on strength, not mercy. He knew what we were building. But he grew, disillusioned. Hale's eyes sharpened. Tell me, James, do you regret walking away? Do you see now what you abandoned? James's voice was gravel. I see a man playing God and damning the rest of us in the process. Hale chuckled softly, shaking his head. Damnation? No. Liberation. Alpha is only the beginning. Soon there will be dozens, hundreds more. A new race. Humanity 2.0. Do you really think your governments, your corporations, will resist once they understand what's possible? You clutch those hard drives like salvation, but they are seeds. Seeds that will grow whether you nurture them or not. Emma's throat tightened. Why show us this? Why not just kill us and be done with it? Hale's gaze shifted to her, almost curious. Because you're proof. Proof that survival is possible. Proof that the next generation isn't hopeless. And perhaps... He paused, considering. Perhaps one of you is worthy to join me. The room went dead silent. Sarah gasped. Join you? After what you've done? Hale's expression didn't flicker. You see tragedy. I see inevitability. The old world must collapse for the new to rise. Alpha is only feared because it is different. But so was every evolutionary leap before it. Tyler shouted at the screen, voice cracking. You're insane! People died screaming in those labs. Families torn apart for your experiment. Hale tilted his head, studying Tyler as if he were a specimen under glass. Then he spoke, his voice soft but cutting. And yet you are still alive, aren't you? Alive because of the crucible I created. You should thank me. Emma's fists trembled. Rage burned hotter than fear. You think you're saving the world, she hissed. But all you've done is build a weapon you can't control. Hale's smile widened again, serene, terrifying. Control is an illusion, my dear. Evolution doesn't ask permission. It simply happens. And I am its architect. The screen flickered once more, his image wavering. But enough talk. I will not deny you your chance. If you reach the core, you may confront me directly. Perhaps you will even see the brilliance for yourself. Or, his eyes gleamed. Perhaps Alpha will finish what it began. With that, the feed cut out. The room plunged back into silence, leaving only the hum of the monitors. Sarah collapsed to her knees, sobbing. Miguel paced furiously, muttering curses. Tyler slumped against the wall, shaking. Emma turned to James, her voice low and steady despite the storm inside her. You knew him. You worked for him. James's eyes were shadows. I walked away when I saw where it was heading. But I never thought he'd take it this far. Emma clenched her jaw, forcing down the panic. Hale wanted them to fracture, to break apart under the weight of his words. She wouldn't give him that. We go to the core, she said firmly. We end this. One way or another. James nodded slowly. Miguel's fists unclenched. Even Sarah, trembling, managed a small nod. They had no illusions left. Hale wasn't hiding in shadows anymore. He had shown them his vision, his arrogance, his obsession. And Alpha was still hunting. The deeper labyrinth awaited. The silence after Hale's transmission was short-lived. Somewhere above, the sound came, a metallic thud, then a scraping echo, as though claws were testing the walls. The survivors froze, the noise slithering down the corridor toward them like a promise. Emma tightened her grip on the flashlight. Move! Now! They broke into a jog, the corridor curving deeper into the earth. The walls here were different, reinforced glass embedded with tubes of glowing blue liquid, like veins pulsing inside the bunker itself. Sarah flinched at every vibration. Tyler muttered curses under his breath, while Miguel carried the case of drives like it was fused to his hands. Behind them, the sound grew louder. Alpha wasn't hunting blindly anymore. It knew exactly where they were. Suddenly, the corridor split. Two directions, left into a narrow staircase, right into a wide hallway lined with sealed doors. Emma skidded to a stop. Which way? James scanned both paths quickly, breathing hard. The core should be below us. Stairs. Unless it's a trap, Miguel hissed. Another metallic thud shook the air. The sound was closer, too close. We don't have time, Sarah cried. Alpha answered for them. It burst into view at the far end of the corridor, a blur of muscle and steel, its frame glinting under the fluorescent glow. Its eyes, pale and unblinking, locked onto them. The air filled with the wet growl of something not entirely human. Go! Emma shoved Sarah toward the stairs. They barreled downward, the echo of Alpha's pursuit shaking the walls. The stairwell spiraled, and each step rang like a bell announcing their flight. Emma risked a glance upward, and nearly stumbled. Alpha was leaping down the stairwell after them, claws digging into the metal railing, vaulting 3 steps at a time with inhuman speed. Faster! Tyler screamed. The group crashed through a heavy steel door at the bottom, slamming it shut behind them. James threw the lock, but already the metal groaned under Alpha's first strike. The monster slammed into it again, denting it inward, shrieking with rage. Keep moving! Emma yelled. The new corridor stretched long and sterile, but it wasn't empty. Glass cells lined both sides, each containing shapes slumped against the walls, figures that twitched as the group passed. Sarah's scream echoed as one lifted its head. Its eyes glowed faint blue, its skin stretched and veined with the same liquid pulsing in the walls. The thing inside slammed a hand against the glass, leaving a smear of blood and condensation. Oh my God! Miguel whispered. There's more than one. Dozens of cells. Dozens of failed experiments. Each face a twisted echo of humanity. Tyler's voice cracked. If Alpha breaks that door, it'll release them all. The steel door behind them screeched again, metal shriveling inward under Alpha's relentless assault. They didn't wait to see it buckle. They sprinted down the hallway, past the cells where dead eyes followed their every step. Ahead, the corridor branched again. 2 sliding doors, both sealed, both requiring clearance. James threw himself at the control panel. It needs a code! Alpha roared, the door behind them finally splitting under the pressure. The monster forced its way inside, glass rattling across the hallway as the cells shook. The failed creatures inside stirred violently, fists pounding against their enclosures. Emma seized James's arm. Override it, just break it! James slammed the butt of his rifle into the panel. Sparks erupted, and with a hiss, the left-hand door slid halfway open. Go! They shoved Sarah through first, then Miguel and Tyler. Emma followed, but James stayed behind, rifle raised. James! Emma shouted. Move! I'll hold it off! Alpha was already halfway down the hall, claws sparking against the floor. Its massive body moved like liquid muscle, unstoppable. James fired burst after burst, bullets tearing into its chest, but Alpha didn't slow. It roared, barreling forward. Emma grabbed James's arm, dragging him through the half-open door just as Alpha lunged. The monster slammed into the frame, claws slashing through the gap, nearly catching James's leg. Together they forced the panel shut. Alpha's roar thundered on the other side, the sound rattling their bones. The survivors collapsed in a heap inside the new chamber, gasping for air. Sarah sobbed, clutching her head. Miguel dropped to his knees, chest heaving. Tyler punched the floor, eyes wild. Emma tried to calm her breathing, but her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Alpha wasn't just hunting anymore, it was driving them deeper, herding them towards something. The chamber they had entered was larger, lined with consoles and humming servers. The ceiling arched high, filled with cables like veins stretching toward the center. A single reinforced door stood opposite, sealed tight with biometric locks. James pulled himself upright, wiping blood from his temple. That's it. The core. Emma stared at the door. The final barrier. Behind them, Alpha's pounding began again, claws tearing at the walls. They were running out of time. The biometric door loomed before them, its steel surface unmarred, its lock blinking with a steady pulse of red light. The pounding on the wall behind them hadn't stopped. Alpha was still there, methodically shredding through layers of concrete and steel. It wasn't mindless rage. It was strategy, persistence. It would get through eventually. Emma pressed her hand against the lock, as if sheer will could force it open. Nothing. The red light blinked back at her, cold and indifferent. We're trapped, Sarah whispered, sliding to the floor. Her eyes were hollow, her voice brittle. This is it. We're going to die down here. No, James said firmly, dragging himself to the nearest console. There's always a way. He started typing, the screen spilling lines of code. Miguel crouched beside him, setting the case of hard drives carefully on the floor. This system is Hale's crown jewel. If there's an override, it'll be buried deep. I can try to piggyback. Do it, James said. Emma forced her focus on the chamber instead of Sarah's quiet sobs or the steady sound of claws on steel. The room felt different from the others. The air was cooler, charged, like standing inside a machine's lungs. Thick cables fed into the walls and floor, all converging on the sealed core door. And along the walls, murals. At first, Emma thought they were just abstract designs etched into the metal. But as she walked closer, her breath caught. They were carvings. Scenes of twisted human figures, limbs elongated, spines arched, faces contorted into snarls. Not art. Not metaphor. Anatomical studies. Designs. Prototypes. Each carving more inhuman than the last. Oh God, Emma whispered. Tyler limped up beside her, eyes wide. He's been planning this for decades. Emma's flashlight skimmed across the wall, landing on the final panel. A towering figure with clawed hands, a face half human, half skull, staring outward like a king carved in nightmare. Beneath it, etched words read, Homo Novus. Her stomach twisted. Alpha wasn't an accident. It was the destination. Suddenly, the lock beeped. Miguel leaned back, sweat pouring down his face. I've got it! The door hissed, steel retracting with a heavy groan. Cold air poured from within, sharp and metallic. They stepped inside. The core chamber stretched vast and circular, its center dominated by a cylindrical tank filled with shimmering liquid. Wires and tubes spiraled upward into the ceiling, glowing faintly blue. The liquid wasn't empty. A body floated within. Not Alpha. Something else. Emma stepped forward, pulse hammering in her throat. It looked unfinished. Human in shape, but taller, leaner, skin pale and translucent like glass. Its chest rose and fell slowly, bubbles swirling around it. Its eyes were closed, but Emma could see the flicker of movement behind the lids. Sarah staggered forward, voice breaking. There's another one? James's face was stone. This isn't Alpha. This is the prototype. No, Miguel corrected, scanning the monitors. Not prototype. Prime. The word froze the air. He pointed to the data scrolling across the screen, genetic sequences, neural mapping, layers of code like a digital soul. Alpha wasn't the goal. Alpha was the weapon to protect this. This is Hale's real creation. As if answering, the monitors flickered. Richard Hale's face appeared again, live, his smile colder than the liquid around the figure in the tank. "You found it," he said softly. "I wondered if you would." Emma's fists clenched. "What is this, Hale? What the hell did you do?" Hale's eyes gleamed. "I perfected what nature failed to finish. Alpha is chaos, brute survival. Necessary, but temporary. Prime is balance. Strength, intellect, longevity. A being beyond human frailty. The next evolution. My legacy." Sarah shook her head violently. "That's not evolution. That's murder." "Murder?" Hale tilted his head, amused. "Do you mourn the Neanderthal, child? Evolution demands sacrifice. Humanity is a brittle shell. It is time for it to crack." Tyler spat at the monitor. "And you made yourself God in the process." Hale's smile never faltered. "Not God. Merely inevitable." The body in the tank twitched, one hand flexing slowly against the glass. Emma felt the blood drain from her face. "It's alive." "Of course it's alive," Hale said, voice almost tender. "And soon, it will awaken. Alpha was born of violence, but Prime will be born into clarity. You've done me a service, really, driving it to this moment. For when Prime wakes, there will be no stopping it." On the monitors, warning symbols flashed. The tank's vitals spiked. Systems whirred to life, a hum building through the floor. "No," Miguel muttered, hands flying over the console. "He's activating it remotely. Hale's waking it up. Shut it down," Emma barked. "I'm trying." Behind them, the pounding resumed. Alpha had breached the outer chamber and was closing in. The roars echoed deeper now, almost desperate. Between the tank awakening and Alpha breaking through, the room was a trap. Emma turned to the others, voice sharp and unyielding. "We have one choice: destroy this place before either of them gets out." Sarah's eyes went wide with terror. Tyler's jaw tightened. Miguel looked torn, hands trembling above the console. James, however, didn't hesitate. He nodded once. "Agreed." On the monitor, Hale leaned forward, his calm breaking at last, voice slicing through static. "You wouldn't dare." Emma met his gaze, steel in her eyes. "Watch me." The tank's occupant stirred again, fingers pressing harder against the glass, cracks beginning to spiderweb outward. And Alpha's roar shook the doorframe, metal buckling inward. The survivors stood in the center of Hale's nightmare, caught between the monster he had unleashed and the perfect being he was about to wake. The endgame had begun. The tank trembled, spiderweb cracks spreading across its surface as Prime stirred within. Each flex of its hand sent shards of glass tinkling into the liquid. The hum of the awakening chamber merged with the pounding outside, the rhythm of Alpha's claws gouging through the final barrier. Richard Hale's face still glared at them from the monitors, but his calm mask was slipping. The faint smile was gone, replaced by a taut, furious line. "Stop this," he hissed. "Do you understand what you're about to destroy? Centuries of progress, billions of dollars, the future of humanity itself." Emma cut him off, her voice sharp as broken glass. "No. This isn't humanity's future. This is your vanity project. And it ends here." She looked to Miguel, who was hunched over the console, sweat dripping onto the keys. "Can you overload it?" Miguel's fingers flew. "Maybe. But if I trip the core failsafes, the entire bunker goes up. Chain reaction. We won't have long to get out." "Do it," Emma said. Hale's voice rose, desperate now. "Listen to me. You think the world will thank you? They'll damn you for destroying salvation. Alpha is proof of concept, but Prime will live forever. Disease, death, weakness, all gone. And you want to burn it because you're afraid?" James lifted his rifle, aiming it at the screen as though Hale could feel the barrel. His voice was steady, cold. "Not afraid. Done." The first explosion came from the door. Metal shrieked as Alpha finally tore it apart. The monster surged into the chamber, its pale eyes burning with rage. It froze for a heartbeat when it saw the tank, its replacement, its successor, and then roared, the sound shaking every bone in their bodies. The tank cracked again, fissures racing across the glass. Prime's eyelids fluttered, its chest heaving. "No!" Hale's voice thundered. "Don't let it die! Protect it!" Alpha didn't obey. With a roar, it slammed its claws against the tank. Glass shattered in a flood of glowing fluid. Prime spilled forward, collapsing onto the steel floor in a wet, gasping heap. For a terrible moment, the chamber went silent. Then Prime raised its head. Its eyes opened cold, crystalline blue. It was weaker than Alpha, unsteady, but even on its knees its presence was terrifying. It looked from Alpha to the humans, expression unreadable, as though trying to decide which it hated more. Emma didn't wait for it to choose. "Miguel! Almost there!" Miguel shouted, hammering the keys. Alarms blared, red lights flooding the chamber. "Core meltdown in 3 minutes!" On the monitors, Hale's face twisted into raw fury. "You ignorant, meddling insects! You think you've beaten me? You've doomed yourselves! When the smoke clears, the world will beg for the future I tried to give them. And they will curse your names!" Emma leaned closer to the nearest monitor, her voice low and venomous. "No, Richard. They'll forget you. Like every tyrant who thought he could live forever." She slammed the butt of her rifle into the screen. Sparks flew, Hale's image shattering into static. Alpha lunged at Prime, claws flashing. The newborn being staggered but struck back, its hands slicing across Alpha's chest with bone-splitting force. The two creatures collided in a storm of flesh and steel, their roars deafening as they tore into each other. The survivors ran. They sprinted back through the corridors, alarms wailing, the walls trembling as the core overloaded. Behind them, the sound of monsters battling echoed like thunder. At the stairwell, Sarah stumbled, nearly falling. James grabbed her arm, hauling her upward. Tyler shoved Miguel forward, the case of drives still clutched to his chest. Emma was last, glancing back one final time. For just a second, she saw the chamber below, Alpha and Prime locked in a death struggle, tearing the room apart, while Hale's monitors flickered uselessly in the background. His empire was crumbling, his creations devouring each other. Richard Hale wasn't being erased by an enemy. He was being devoured by his own hubris. The bunker shook violently. A blast wave roared upward as they burst through the final stairwell door into the night air. Cold winds slapped their faces as they stumbled across the rocky field outside, collapsing onto the ground just as the earth behind them convulsed. With a roar like the sky itself splitting, the hillside erupted. Fire and smoke tore upward, the mansion above collapsing into itself, swallowed whole by the inferno. The ground trembled until it seemed the world might split open. Then, slowly, the rumble faded, leaving only smoke curling into the starry sky. The survivors lay scattered across the dirt, coughing, shaking, but alive. Emma pushed herself up, staring at the burning horizon. "It's over," she whispered. James stood beside her, face lit by the fire. "No," he said quietly. "It's just beginning. Hale may be gone. But the world will learn what he tried to do. And some will want to finish it." Emma didn't answer. She only looked at the hard drives Miguel still clutched. Proof. Evidence. Maybe even the key to stopping the next Hale before he began. Sarah broke the silence, her voice trembling but fierce. "Then we tell the world. We tell everything." For a long moment they stood together, watching the flames consume the last monument of Richard Hale. The billionaire who thought he could live forever had been crushed, not by enemies, not by governments, not even by fate. By his own obsession. By the monsters he birthed. And as the fire raged, it left behind only a single truth. No one outruns the grave. The fire still smoldered on the hillside, black smoke curling into the night sky. The ruins of Richard Hale's empire were buried beneath tons of earth and steel, but the air still seemed to hum with his presence, like a ghost too arrogant to die. The survivors huddled around the case Miguel carried. Inside, drives filled with Hale's research, his notes, his blueprints for horrors that had nearly destroyed them. It was proof of his crimes, but also power. James stared at it with hard eyes. We destroy it. Tonight. Miguel flinched, clutching the case tighter. Wait, think about what's on here. Data no one else has. Medical breakthroughs, genetic enhancements. Monsters. Sarah spat. That's what's on there. Monsters. Miguel's voice trembled, but there was hunger in it. Not just monsters. Cures. Treatments for things we can't even touch yet. Hale wanted immortality, yes, but pieces of his research could save millions. We can't just burn it. Emma stepped closer, her shadow cutting across him. We're not Hale. We don't get to decide who lives forever, who gets altered. That way lies him. We end it. For a moment, silence stretched between them, the crackle of the fire behind their words. And then Tyler laughed. It was low, bitter, and wrong. He had been quiet since their escape, but now his eyes glinted with something new. Something dangerous. You're all fools, he said softly. Do you know what people would pay for this? Governments, corporations, billionaires with deeper pockets than Hale ever had. He thought he was untouchable, but he underestimated greed. Out there, right now, are people who would kill us for a single scrap of this data. James raised his rifle. You planning to hand it to them? Tyler spread his hands in mock surrender. Planning? No. Considering? Absolutely. Because unlike the rest of you, I understand the world. If we torch this, it doesn't end. Someone else will build it again, maybe worse. But if we sell it, if we control who gets it, we could buy our safety. Our freedom. Our future. Emma's heart sank. She saw it now, Hale's shadow stretching into Tyler, twisting him the same way. The billionaire might be dead, but his poison lingered, whispering promises of power and control. Listen to yourself, she said. You sound just like him. Tyler's expression hardened. Better than sounding like a martyr. Hale lost because he tried to hoard his empire. Me? I'd spread it. Trade it. Survive with it. That's the difference between him and me. I know how to win. He lunged, snatching at the case in Miguel's hands. Miguel resisted, panic flashing in his eyes. Don't, Tyler, don't! The group exploded into chaos. Sarah screamed, James barked an order, Emma drove her shoulder into Tyler's chest. The case fell, hitting the dirt with a thud. In the struggle, Tyler pulled a knife from his belt. His face twisted with desperation. Don't you see? This is bigger than us. Hale may be gone, but the future is still here, in my hands. Emma slammed her fist into his jaw. The knife clattered away. James kicked it out of reach, leveling his rifle at Tyler's chest. Enough, James growled. Tyler staggered, blood on his lip, but his eyes still burned. You can't stop it. Someone will find it. If not me, then someone richer, smarter, stronger. Hale's dream won't die here. It can't. The world wants it too much. Emma bent, picked up the case, and set it on a flat rock. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from fury. Fury at Hale, at Tyler, at the endless hunger that men like them carried. She pulled a flare from her pack, cracked it, and tossed it onto the case. Flames erupted, licking across the drives, devouring the data. The group stood in silence, watching the last of Hale's legacy burn to ash. Tyler screamed, a sound of rage and despair, but Sarah and Miguel held him back. Emma whispered, almost to herself, No more tyrants. No more gods. For a long time, no one moved. The fire burned until there was nothing left but twisted metal and blackened plastic. Hale's empire, his monsters, his dream of immortality, was gone. And with it, the last illusion that his power might live on. James lowered his rifle, shoulders sagging. It's finished. But Emma knew better. She looked at the horizon, at the dark shape of cities beyond the hills. Somewhere out there, another billionaire was watching, waiting, already dreaming of picking up where Hale left off. She turned to the group, voice steady. Then we make sure the world knows. We tell everything. We don't let Hale's ghost crawl into someone else's hands. Sarah nodded, tears streaking her face. Miguel looked hollow, but he agreed. Even Tyler, held down in the dirt, went quiet at last. They had survived Hale. They had crushed his empire. But survival was only the beginning. The real fight, the fight to stop the next Hale, was still to come. As dawn broke, painting the horizon in blood-red light, the survivors walked away from the smoldering ruins. Behind them lay the grave of a billionaire who thought himself eternal. Ahead lay a world still hungry for his poison. But they would fight it. They had to. Because Richard Hale's greatest mistake was believing no one could ever crush him. And now, in the ashes of his empire, he was proof of a truth older than money, older than power. Every tyrant falls. The city skyline glittered as if nothing had changed. Skyscrapers pierced the night sky, neon signs hummed, and traffic crawled along endless highways. To the millions who lived there, the world was the same. The markets opened. The rich grew richer. The poor disappeared into shadows. But for Emma, Sarah, James, and Miguel, the world was forever divided into before Hale and after Hale. They sat in a dingy motel room on the edge of the city, exhausted but unbroken. On the table between them lay a battered laptop. It glowed faintly, uploading their testimony, photographs, and video to every news outlet, every watchdog organization, every corner of the internet. Sarah rubbed her temples. Once this goes live, there's no going back. The whole world will know what he did. James gave a grim nod. Good. Let them choke on the truth. Miguel's hands shook as he held his coffee. Do you think anyone will care? People worship billionaires here. They don't want to believe monsters hide behind their money. What if they bury it? Pay it away like they always do? Emma leaned forward, her eyes blazing. Then we don't let them. Hale thought he was untouchable. He thought money made him immortal. We proved him wrong. Now we prove the world wrong too. If they try to bury this, we dig it back up. Over and over, until there's nothing left of him but a stain they can't wash out. The laptop chimed. The upload was complete. For a moment, no one breathed. Then Sarah whispered, "It's out." Across the city, screens flickered to life. News anchors read words they never imagined saying. Billionaire Richard Hale implicated in illegal human experiments. The footage rolled, grainy but undeniable. Cages. Screams. Hale himself ranting about immortality, about being a god. The internet erupted. Hashtags trended within minutes. Hashtag Hale exposed. Hashtag burn the crown. Hashtag every tyrant falls. Conspiracy forums lit up, TikToks spread clips like wildfire, and late-night hosts cracked bitter jokes about the billionaire who wanted to live forever but couldn't outlive the truth. The empire Hale had built on money and fear crumbled faster than steel under fire. His board of directors scrambled, his fortune froze in lawsuits, his name etched itself into history, not as a titan, but as a cautionary tale. Back in the motel, Tyler stirred. He sat chained to a chair, bruised but alive. His eyes tracked the flickering news broadcast with something between awe and rage. They'll just replace him, Tyler muttered. Somebody richer, smarter, hungrier. Hale's gone, but the machine isn't. You didn't kill the disease, you just killed one tumor. Emma didn't even look at him. Maybe. But we showed the world what the disease looks like. You think people will just forget cages and screaming faces? You think another Hale can rise without someone remembering? No. His empire is ashes. His name is poison. And if another tyrant wants to rise, they'll know what's waiting for them, us. James added quietly. The fall. By morning, reporters camped outside the motel. Protesters marched in the streets. The survivors slipped out before dawn, vanishing into the chaos they had unleashed. They weren't heroes, not in their eyes. They were just witnesses who refused to stay silent. Weeks passed. Hale's properties were seized. His offshore accounts unraveled. His name was stripped from skyscrapers and stadiums. But the most crushing blow came not from the courts or the politicians, it came from the people. Children chanted his name like a curse on playgrounds. His portrait was burned in effigy outside banks. In late-night diners, strangers whispered about him the way they once whispered ghost stories. A billionaire who wanted to be eternal but was swallowed by the earth itself. Richard Hale had dreamed of being remembered as a god. He would be remembered forever, yes. But only as a monster. One night, months later, Emma stood alone on a pier, the wind sharp against her face. She tossed a stone into the dark water, watching the ripples spread and vanish. She thought of Hale's voice, echoing in the cavern, "I am eternal. I am the future." But the water was silent. The city lights shimmered on the waves. The future was theirs, messy and imperfect, free of his shadow. Emma whispered into the night, "You were wrong." Behind her, Sarah, James, and Miguel joined her on the pier. They said nothing, only stood together, breathing in the salt air, the quiet. For the first time in months, the silence felt clean. Far away, in some glittering penthouse, another billionaire scrolled through the news feed. His glass of wine trembled as he read about Hale's fall, the mobs, the fury, the flames. He closed his laptop with trembling hands, staring out at the city. For the first time in his life, he felt something stronger than greed. He felt fear. And that fear, the fear of being the next tyrant crushed, was Hale's true legacy. Thus ended Richard Hale, the billionaire who tried to become eternal. His empire reduced to rubble. His dream burned to ash. His name etched in history not as a conqueror but as a warning. Every fortune crumbles. Every tyrant falls. No one is untouchable. And in the end, even the richest man in the world can be ground into dust.